If you knew that doing the right thing would cost you your life, would you do it?
How far are you willing to go to save the ones that you love? Peter Parker had these questions thrust onto him the entire time he was Spider-Man. At the young age of 15, he had 1 year to figure them out, because by 16, he would be dead. But there is a bigger question here. Was the death of Spider-Man any good, though? To answer that, we'll have to go back to 2011. So, join me in opening up the archive to the death of Ultimate Spider-Man.
I'm not afraid. I'm tired. But I am not afraid. Just so you know, I won't go down easy. And this I swear to you, I will not go down alone.
Ultimate Spider-Man vs. Sinister Six color shock slingers and masks. Now you can web sling your way with colored webs. 3 different colors to shock your enemies. Marvel's Ultimate Spider-Man color shock slingers and masks, each sold separately.
Ultimate Spider-Man was a massive sensation, with the first issue hitting stores in September of the year 2000, written by, at the time, young Brian Michael Bendis. What followed was an incredible 160-issue run, an animated series, spin-offs, toys, and video games that followed Ultimate Spider-Man's influence on Marvel. Ultimate Spider-Man hit a sweet spot with the audience, and a lot of it had to do with the change in direction they made to Peter Parker's story. Peter was also 15 years old in the mainstream 616 universe, when he was bit by the spider that gave him his powers, but we quickly move on to adulthood from there, and Peter has been an adult ever since, basically. Ultimate Spider-Man chose a different angle, to focus on the teenage years of Peter Parker. We get a young Mary Jane, a young Gwen Stacy, Aunt May, Eddie Brock, and Uncle Ben. To my surprise, and Amazing Fantasy number 15, Spider-Man's first appearance in Marvel, Uncle Ben only appears for a few panels before he dies. We get a real connection to him in Ultimate Spider-Man, as Peter's father figure and mentor. The man who left him with the philosophy that eventually Peter would honor with his life. With great power comes great responsibility. Because you see, my friends, Peter Parker's death was written in stone the day he embraced that philosophy. In many ways, Peter Parker died all the way back in Ultimate Spider-Man number 5, when Uncle Ben was killed by a criminal that Peter could have stopped, but chose not to. Ultimate Spider-Man's end was teased with the Death of Spider-Man arc, which sold a combined 350,000 issues to comic shops at the time. It was, however, technically a side event in Marvel at the time. During this time, the Ultimates, the Ultimate Universe's Avengers, were experiencing a civil war. And what that meant was the heroes were busy fighting each other. Too busy to be heroes, except for Peter. At the start of the Civil War, Spider-Man had been voted in to be a potential member of the Ultimate Avengers by a split decision of 2-3. Thor vouched for him, Iron Man vouched for him, Captain America did not. And because of that, Captain America made a point to let Peter know about it. He would train Peter, make him ready for being an Ultimate, but he did not approve of him or his immaturity. And he had a point. Peter was 16 years old and about to join the greatest team of heroes in the world. The risk to a young man's life would never be higher. But Cap went further. He told Peter he was a fool, and that he treated being a hero like a joke, that he put others at risk with his attitude, and he didn't deserve to be in the spot he was in. Which made it all the more incredible when Spider-Man saved his life. Because during the superhero Civil War, Captain America dropped his guard. The events of the Civil War led Captain America to a confrontation with Nick Fury, and Captain drew the fight out. He took his time, punished Nick Fury. He fought like lives weren't on the line. If he'd been serious, he may have had time to notice that the Punisher had him in his sights. Punisher apologized under his breath, aimed, and fired. Spider-Man didn't even think. It was pure reflex built on character and heroism. Spider-Man dove faster than he ever had before and pushed Captain America out of the way, taking the bullet through the back. Peter crumpled to the ground, and Captain America picked him up in his arms to get him to safety. Humbled by Peter's self-sacrifice, he listened to Peter self-deprecate himself, similarly to how Cap had done it hours before. Are you kidding? You took a bullet without even hesitating. When you grow up, you're going to be the best out of all of us. That's the last thing that Peter heard before the Civil War came down on him. War Machine dive bombs the bridge and sends Peter falling into the debris. By the time Spider-Man came back to consciousness, Peter had been bleeding, pelted by debris, and was actively trying to keep his insides inside of him with his webbing. He knew he had to go to the hospital, and he should hold up long enough to get there with his webbing, keeping him from bleeding out. But this wasn't the story for that. Within the same thought, Spider-Man looks up and sees his final fight. The Sinister Six, down a member and Doc Ock, were heading straight for the Parker residence. Before Spider-Man saved Captain America's life, Peter made sure to warn his family of the news he'd heard. There was a jailbreak, and the Sinister Six had escaped. Norman Osborn had known Peter Parker was Spider-Man since the day he got bit. And after over 150 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, Norman tried to kill him multiple times. Osborn was no longer sane. He was never really sane to speak of, but his goals had narrowed down to just one by this point in the story. He wanted to kill Peter Parker. And on his way out of jail, he freed the other 5 members of the Sinister Six: Doc Ock, Sandman, Electro, Vulture, and Kraven. All of which also wanted to kill Peter. All except for one. They had broken out of prison, and the heroes were occupied with the superhero civil war. The villains had their best chance to escape and try to remake their lives. Doc Ock made this sentiment known to Osborn after Norman instructed the group to go after Spider-Man immediately. Norman Osborn beat him to death for his troubles. The remaining 5 were now flying above Peter Parker, but they weren't heading straight for his home. They were heading straight for his whole world. Aunt May, Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, Osborn would find them all. So Peter looked up, he looked down, and then he swung after them, faster again than he'd ever before, leaving a trail of his life on the way. Peter catches a break for the first time in this story, because when the Sinister Five arrive to his house, they don't find Aunt May and Gwen Stacy. The Parkers had recently gotten a few new house guests, some of Peter's amazing friends, Human Torch and Iceman. The Parker home would not go down without a fight. The first thing Norman Osborn demanded was Peter Parker. Get him out here, now. The Human Torch gave his response. The 2 boys were holding their own, but the villains countered them perfectly. Sandman snuffed out the Human Torch, and Electro knocks out Iceman. Norman Osborn, however, remained unconscious as well, leaving the villains wondering what their next move would be. Their next move stood in front of them, with one hand holding his insides in. The Vulture charged, blades at the ready, and he was dispatched almost instantly by Spider-Man. The remaining 3 charged, smelling blood, but a quick move from Peter and the water from a fire hydrant and Electro hits the deck. Sandman and Vulture renew their attack. Peter was far from healthy and every move cost him. His neighbors could see that, including the one who called his Aunt May to tell her that these men were killing him. May Parker, who told Peter she'd flee to safety, sped back to her boy. Another punishing blow from Sandman, and Peter didn't have much left in him. Peter's neighbors try to help him as Electro prepares the execution shot. May Parker shoots Electro through the chest. The resulting explosion takes out the remaining villains. Peter's family had arrived. The villains were down, the family hugs each other, and for the first time since this began, Peter lets himself smile as he falls into his aunt's arms. He had nothing left, and he finally let himself just rest. Norman Osborn was awake. Barely avoiding the crushing attack, Peter swings off, family in hand. His web bandages coming undone, he was bleeding again. He begs his family to leave, and then he leaps back into the fight, clashing with Norman, who wasn't far behind. He lands the hardest punch of the night, and teeth fly out of Osborn's mouth. But it cost him. Blood pours, and Peter knows he needs help, so he swings away to wake up the Human Torch and even the fight. Johnny Storm shakes off the cobwebs and charges back at the now berserking Norman, attempting to turn him to ash. He pours on the juice. Then, the unthinkable. Norman evolves in the last minute, absorbing Human Torch's power. A final form emerged, burning white hot. The self-styled devil attacks. But no one will ever say that Peter Parker lacks ingenuity, even at his most hurt. The devil takes a beating from a mailbox and gets tossed into a fire hydrant, extinguishing his added aura. He just needs to stay down now. And Peter watches him, a devil in the shape of death, get up again. A vicious smile, knowing that Peter had nothing left. But Peter never did this on his own. He wouldn't have made it this far without the people he loved. And another one of those people just showed up at about 70 miles per hour. Mary Jane crashes a stolen truck into Osborn, knocking him away and giving Peter a moment to breathe. He doesn't have many breaths left, but now he can make them all count. With one last kiss to his love, Peter throws Mary Jane aside and starts his comeback. Thousands of pounds raised over his head, he smashes the truck into Norman Osborn, again and again. When Osborn can't move anymore, he threatens, and when he can't threaten anymore, Peter rests. Finally, Norman Osborn was dead. The explosion of the vehicle took whatever strength Peter had left. He was crumpled to the ground and couldn't move. His family rushed to his side and heard his last words. I couldn't save him. Uncle Ben, I couldn't save him. But I saved you. I did it. And Spider-Man, Peter Parker, died in the arms of the people he loved and with a conscience finally clear again. And that was the death of Spider-Man, folks. 160 issues wrapped up with Peter saving his family. It was touching and action-packed and heroic, a true classic. There was a beautiful symmetry to it with Peter saving May and, in his mind, making up for his original sin of not preventing Uncle Ben's death. Spider-Man proved Captain America wrong. He earned the respect of the people of New York who once feared him due to J. Jonah Jameson's slander. And he got back with his girlfriend for the final part of his life. He made everyone proud. It was a good end to a fantastic run. If I could judge it on its standalone merits, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. To answer the question, was it any good though? Yeah, it really was. But it wasn't perfect. I think the biggest criticism to it is the actual reason for Spider-Man's death. As badly beaten as he was, as much blood as he lost, he did die due to the truck exploding. It's not thematically fitting. It holds no symbolism, and it wasn't really necessary. Spider-Man had a gunshot wound. He'd been bleeding for the whole time. He was being electrocuted, burned, and bashed. In fact, after the gunshot wound, there were multiple times where Peter acknowledged he needed immediate medical attention. But he couldn't do it, because he had lives he needed to protect. He was literally trading his life away, a drop at a time, until everyone was safe. So, a much more fitting end would have been that after Osborn stopped moving, Peter just drops to his knees, falls into his aunt's hands, and says his final words and passes away. He took that bullet in the first place without a doubt in his mind. An act of heroism that humbled Captain America. Let it mean what it was meant to. No need for more. It feels like Brian Michael Bendis wrote himself into a corner, given how much Peter endured, and he tripped a bit at the end. Still, Death of Spider-Man was very good and deserves praise. So, for now, let's close the archive and let Spider-Man rest. Besides, that little trip is nothing compared to how bad Bendis was about to trip.